Dust of information. The archive was a skeleton of a building, its walls cracked and stained with years of dust and neglect. Inside, rows of shattered terminals and broken holo displays flickered weakly, struggling to hold on to fading fragments of a world long gone. The air smelled of rust and forgotten secrets. Elias moved carefully between the ruins, his footsteps stirring fine clouds of debris. He was an archivist, a scavenger of data, a collector of what remained. In this fractured world after the Great Shutdown, knowledge was the currency of power. But what Elias sought was not power. He hunted the past. His fingers traced the brittle pages of a manual salvaged from a sunken archive. The words were nearly erased, smeared by time and decay. But Elias had memorized their shapes long ago. Somewhere, buried deep in these ruins, was the key to what had been lost, the history erased by the collapse of the network. Around him, the city whispered. Broken neon signs hummed feebly outside the shattered windows, their glow barely piercing the perpetual dusk. Faint echoes of digital ghosts flickered in the corners of his vision, memories trapped in dead code, haunting the ruins of what humanity once built. Elias had learned to listen. His world was one of fragments, no longer whole, no longer reliable. The Great Shutdown had shattered the global digital web, severing humanity's collective memory. The old archives were ruins, scattered and corrupted. Data cults had risen, worshipping broken shards of code as divine relics. Corporations guarded their secrets with mercenaries and fire. And between the enclaves, smugglers traded memories like contraband. Elias had no faith in gods or kings. He sought truth in the dust. But truth was elusive. The lines between history and myth had blurred. Every recovered file could be a lie. Every memory a distortion. Yet Elias kept digging, driven by a silent obsession. A sudden noise echoed, a soft mechanical creak. Elias froze. The ruins were rarely empty. Raiders, or worse. He slipped behind a crumbled wall, heart pounding. From the shadows emerged a figure, hooded and cautious. Elias's breath caught. He recognized the gait, the way the stranger moved. "Morris," he whispered under his breath. She stepped into the flickering light, her eyes sharp and wary. Morris, a ghost from his past, a former archivist turned memory smuggler. Their paths had crossed and diverged, tangled in the chaos of this broken world. "Morris," she said, voice low, "still chasing ghosts?" He didn't answer. The tension was thick, years of mistrust and unspoken debts hanging between them. "Why are you here?" she pressed. "Looking for answers," he said. "The past doesn't belong to the corporations or the cults. It belongs to us all." Morris's lips twitched into a bitter smile. "And you think digging through dust will bring it back?" He shook his head. "Not bring it back. Just remember." The ruins seemed to hold their breath. Outside, the neon flickered, shadows shifting in time with their quiet confrontation. "Be careful," Morris warned. "Some memories are better left buried." Elias watched her disappear into the dark, a flicker of doubt gnawing at him. He turned back to the shattered terminals, to the fractured data and lost stories. The dust of information whispered promises and threats alike. He had to find the truth before it was erased again. A distant rumble shook the ground, a reminder that the world outside was no less broken than the ruins themselves. Elias tightened his grip on the tattered manual, eyes scanning for the next clue. The past was a labyrinth, and he was still lost within its shadows. Elias sank deeper into the archive's bowels, each step a calculated risk through debris and broken circuits. The silence pressed against him like a weight, broken only by the faint hum of decaying technology. He was searching for something specific, a hidden cache rumored to contain encrypted data files from before the Great Shutdown. His fingers grazed the cold surface of a collapsed data terminal. It was half-buried rubble, its once sleek casing cracked and scorched. Elias knelt, brushing away the dust. The screen flickered weakly, a ghostly shimmer of light attempting to rise from oblivion. Fragments of code swam in the haze of the damaged display. Elias's eyes traced the characters, distorted and fragmented. These were remnants of a lost language, a dialect of digital memory erased from common knowledge. A soft vibration in his pocket startled him. He extracted a small, battered data key, a relic of better days, capable of accessing locked caches and secret servers scattered across the ruins. It was old tech, but reliable. The archive's corridors twisted and crumbled like a dying organism. Pipes leaked dark fluids. Cables hung like vines, choking the walls. Somewhere above, the flicker of failing lights cast uneven shadows. Elias activated the key, linking it to the terminal. A moment passed, then a faint sequence of encrypted files began to load. He worked fast, fingers moving with practiced precision as he bypassed corrupted sectors. Suddenly, the terminal sparked violently, sending a shower of sparks into the stale air. Elias jerked back, heart racing. The device groaned, struggling against the decay. Not yet, he heard. He tapped a command line, pulling encrypted files into a temporary cache. The data was incomplete. Snippets of conversations, broken blueprints, flickering images. It was a jigsaw puzzle with missing pieces. A whisper echoed through the corridor, metal scraping on concrete. Elias stiffened, senses sharpening. He wasn't alone. From the shadows, a figure emerged, tall, cloaked in a dark coat patched with glowing circuit lines, eyes gleaming with cold calculation. It was a scavenger, known for taking what others couldn't keep safe. "You shouldn't be here," the stranger said, voice low and mechanical. Elias squared his shoulders. "Neither should you." The scavenger stepped closer, pulling a compact pistol from beneath the coat. The cold barrel glinted in the dim light. "No need for this," Elias said calmly, hands raised slightly. The scavenger smirked, a flicker of amusement in their eyes. "Everything here is a fight. Information is power. You think you can steal from dead and walk away?" Elias's gaze flicked to the data key. "I'm not stealing. I'm recovering." A tense silence stretched between them, broken only by the distant drip of leaking pipes. The scavenger lowered the weapon slowly. Then, maybe, we have the same goal. Elias raised an eyebrow. You expect me to believe that? The scavenger nodded. Name's Kale. I've been tracking that same cache. It's not just data. It's a map, a guide to something bigger. Elias's heart quickened. A map to what? Kale's eyes darkened. A secret deep beneath the city. Something corporations want to keep hidden. Elias weighed the risk. Working with Kale was dangerous. Trust was a luxury in this world. But the prize is too important. All right, he said finally, we work together. But if you betray me, Kale smiled, sharp and cold. I won't. They moved deeper into the archive, the air growing colder, the walls closing in. The terminal's screen flickered, the encrypted files pulsing with unreadable promise. Elias felt the weight of the past pressing down, the dust of information settling heavy around them. Whatever lay beneath the city could change everything, or destroy what little hope remained. The deeper they descended, the heavier the silence became, thick with the residue of forgotten voices. Flickering lights overhead sputtered, casting long, skeletal shadows that danced along the crumbling walls. Elias and Kale moved in tandem, their footsteps muffled by layers of dust and debris. The map in Elias's cache was fragmented, data packets interlaced with corrupted files and encrypted sequences. But together they began to piece it together, a labyrinth of tunnels and sublevels beneath the city, once the nerve center of the world's last digital fortress. Elias's fingers hovered over the hollow screen, eyes scanning for clues. The cache contained more than coordinates. It hinted at something deeper, an archive of unaltered memories, untainted by the corporation's rewriting or the church's dogma. "Why hide it here?" Kale asked, voice low. "Because it's dangerous," Elias replied. "If the wrong hands get this, they can control not just the past, but the future." The tunnels they entered were a maze of rusted metal and shattered glass. Pipes overhead leaked a thin, toxic mist. The smell of decay clung to everything. Here, the ghosts of the old world whispered in static bursts. At a junction, Elias paused, tracing symbols etched into the corroded wall.
ancient glyphs interwoven with circuit patterns, a language lost to all but the archivists. "Coordinates lead this way," Elias said. Cale nodded, eyes sharp. "Then let's hope the traps still work." They moved carefully, senses alert for any sign of corporate enforcers or rival scavengers. The city above was dangerous, but beneath it, even more so. A sudden clatter echoed, a panel sliding open in the floor. Elias barely caught himself as the ground threatened to swallow him whole. Cale's quick reflexes steadied him. "Booby traps," Elias muttered. "They didn't want anyone wandering here." Cale's grin was grim. Welcome to the old world. Pressing on, they entered a vast chamber, walls lined with racks of glowing data shards, pulsating faintly like captured fireflies. The archive hummed with dormant energy. Elias reached out, his hand trembling slightly. Each shard was a fragment of memory, a sliver of history preserved against oblivion. He plucked one carefully, the surface shimmering with ghostly images, faces, places, events frozen in time. "Real memories," Elias whispered. Cale's voice dropped. "Not the rewritten ones, not the filtered narratives the corporations feed the masses." The weight of it settled on them. Here lay the unvarnished truth of a world lost, a truth that could unravel the fragile peace of the enclaves. A distant rumble vibrated through the chamber. The ground shook, dust falling from the ceiling. "Time's running out," Elias said. Cale scanned the room. "We need to move these shards, get them out before this place collapses." Elias nodded, carefully packing the most intact data shards into his bag. Each was a treasure, a piece of a puzzle that could change everything. But as they prepared to leave, a cold voice echoed through the chamber's speakers. "Unauthorized access detected. Security protocols activated." Red lights flashed. Steel doors began to close, sealing the exits. Elias's heart hammered. The archive was defending itself, a last barrier against the truths buried beneath the dust. "We're trapped," Cale said, drawing a blade with a dull metallic hiss. "No," Elias said. "We're exactly where they want us." They exchanged a grim look. The past wasn't just memories. It was a trap, a challenge, and a test. Outside, the city's neon glimmer flickered against the dark sky, oblivious to the battle unfolding beneath. The chamber tightened as the steel doors slammed shut, echoing through the stale air like a death sentence. Elias's breath hitched, but he forced himself to stay calm. Panic was a luxury that no one in this broken world could afford. Cale's blade caught the faint red glow of the alarm lights, the edge shimmering with a cold menace. He moved to the control panel, fingers dancing over cracked buttons and flickering touchscreens. The system was archaic, but it still fought fiercely to protect its secrets. "Help me with the bypass," Cale commanded without looking. Elias dropped the bag of data shards and crouched beside him. Their hands worked in tandem, pressing codes and bypass sequences scavenged from old repositories. Every second the doors closed tighter, grinding closer to sealing their fate. A low rumble vibrated through the floor, dust raining from the cracked ceiling. The building was collapsing, a reminder that time itself
was a predator here. Almost there, Cale muttered, sweat beading on his brow. Then the doors stilled, inches from closing completely. A hiss of released pressure filled the chamber. They pushed through the narrowing gap, stumbling into a long corridor lined with dead screens and shattered cables. Elias clutched the bag tighter, feeling the weight of the memories it contained. "Why risk this?" Elias asked quietly, voice low. Cale glanced at him, eyes sharp but not unkind. "Because the past isn't dead. It's the only weapon we have." They moved faster now, adrenaline sharpening their senses. The echoes of footsteps behind them told of pursuers, corporate mercenaries, or worse. The past was hunted as fiercely as the present. At the corridor's end, a rusted ladder led upward. Elias hesitated, looking back at the dim archive behind them. "Ready?" Cale asked. Elias nodded. "Let's finish this." The climb was arduous, metal groaning under their weight, rust flakes falling like dry leaves. Above, the faint glow of the city's broken neon spilled through cracked vents. They emerged onto the rooftop, cold wind biting through their clothes. The skyline was a jagged silhouette against a bleeding twilight. Neon signs flickering like dying stars. Cale pulled a comm device from his coat, voice terse. "Extraction point secure. ETA 5 minutes." Elias scanned the horizon, heart heavy with the burden of what they carried. The data shards were more than history. They were a challenge to the fragile order of the enclaves. He thought of the dust settling in the archive, the silence waiting for the next seekers. The past was not a place to rest, but a battlefield. The city breathed beneath them, its neon heart flickering, a fragile pulse in the dark. "Whatever happens next," Elias said, "the truth will survive." Cale nodded, eyes fixed on the approaching silhouette. As the shadow closed in, Elias felt the weight of the world pressing down. The dust of information was no longer silent. The extraction drone hovered into view, its rotors slicing the thickening dusk with mechanical precision. Elias and Kael moved quickly, the weight of their haul settling like a stone in Elias's gut. Every step was measured, every breath cautious. The city below seemed indifferent, its fractured neon veins pulsing faintly, unaware of the fragile cargo ascending above. The drone's hatch hissed open, a hollow invitation amid the sprawling ruin. Kael handed over the bag of data shards, the glow from the fragments casting ghostly patterns on their faces. "Uploading now," Kael muttered, fingers flying over the drone's interface. The shard's light intensified, feeding into the drone's core like embers rekindled. Elias felt the weight of history unraveling. These weren't just lost memories. They were unfiltered truth, shards of a past suppressed by power and fear. He thought of the archivists, the cultists, the mercenaries, all tangled in a web of forgotten lies. A sudden crackle erupted in the drone's comms. Static, then a voice. "Package secured, extraction point compromised, incoming hostiles." Elias's heart sank. The corporations never slept, and the dust of information was a prize they'd kill for. "Get ready," Kael said. "We're not done yet." Behind them, the shadows of the city lengthened, wrapping around the ruined skyline like a suffocating shroud. The past was not just a relic, it was a battleground, a spark waiting to ignite a reckoning. Elias looked out over the fractured cityscape, the glowing neon flickering like dying stars. Somewhere beneath the haze, memories waited, unclaimed, waiting for a new hand to grasp them. The drone lifted, carrying the shards into the uncertain night. Elias and Kael melted into the darkness, ghosts among ghosts. In the silence that followed, the dust settled again. But the world had shifted, ever so slightly. The past was no longer silent.